Let's talk about the Warcraft Netflix series. It's going to happen. I'm only 98.73% sure it's gonna come out before 2028. And the last 1.27% is the Microsoft money that nobody knows where it will go first. Why am I so sure? Well, it was not only hinted and indirectly confirmed by higher-ups at Blizz in an earlier interview, but the successes of some video game adaptations have been so great that the biggest video game of all time, that's not Pokemon, makes the logical next step. And speaking of Pokemon, although the adaptation from the game was an anime, it also spawned a live-action movie, which was cute, sure, but all of this made them so much money that it's still surprising we are not flooded with Pikachu paraphernalia every time I try to buy a pretzel at the local kiosk. That aside, the most recent success story has to be that of Super Mario Bros. Movie that released earlier this year. Not only was the movie so good, but it was so Super Mario. The acting, the feeling, the animation, the singing, it was like re-experiencing my childhood before my dad left for milk all over again. And the biggest win for the movie is that it rebooted, rebranded, reinvigorated, redeemed whatever steaming pile of Bowser leftover this was. Yeesh. That precedent will work well if we have to think of the Warcraft movie, which was planned to be a first in a trilogy. And the Warcraft movie wasn't even bad, it just didn't sell as much, most likely because the medium was bad. Cinema might not be yet the time for World of Warcraft, but the small screen sure is. The Witcher, first season, proved that live-action adaptations can be super successful even when the main dude is played by a pretty boy that doesn't match the character at all. Remember when we trashed Cavill for not being Geralty enough? And still, The Witcher, the first season, was one of the best examples of video games having a proper live-action adaptation on the small screens, and Netflix to boot. Well, video games and in Witcher's case, books as well. But it gets better. Castlevania proved you can take an even more obscure title and have it be incredibly well done, with a proper amount of gore, violence, and character sarcastic wit and banter. And not only unironically amazing, but actually successful. Yeah, Castlevania was a proper success story of putting out a show about a video game arguably less known than World of Warcraft, albeit with the Dracula theme that did some heavy lifting for its appeal. And I think this is just about the right time before some people start to lose their marbles for not talking about it as well. But Arcane is the big fish, the good example that everyone keeps using again and again and again of how you can take a popular game with close to no lore outside character bios, a questionably designed website, and who knows what other, oh, I didn't know they also did this, mediums that tell some story about some character published out there, whatever. With Arcane's success, we can ride the it can be done horse for quite a while when it comes to the almost confirmed Warcraft Netflix series. And it was almost confirmed. Earlier this year, IGN conducted an interview with Holly Longdale and John Haidt, and there were a non-singular amount of questions regarding a potential Netflix series for WoW. This leads me to believe that the topic was planned to be approached because in all of the interviews, whenever a subject that was considered tangent was approached, it received a maximum of one question with a relatively vague political answer of, you never know. Whether past interviewers approached this same topic or player housing, community perception, Bobby Kotick's new nail clipper, the line of questioning never actually developed into a line and instead remained a clear and predictable period like the one my ex-girlfriend got when we were still never mind. Not only was this not the case with the Warcraft Netflix topic, but we got some interesting doses of copium and actual justifications as to why it will happen now more than ever before. The interviewer went on to say, can we see Warcraft expand out into multimedia, into shows, into movies again? To which John Haidt had to say,
well, are we going to see Warcraft expand out into multimedia, into shows, into movies again? It's been, 2016 since the movie came out.
That was one of the big reasons that we've somewhat reorganized as, a Warcraft universe. So Holly's part of the leadership team for that. So not just overseeing WoW, that's her, her baby, but also contributes to some of the strategic decisions that we have around where do we want to go next.
Where should they go next? That should, of course, mean anything. Anything is possible. As far as the game has progressed, WoW has actually came a long way and did things we didn't think they could do or would do. Remember J. Allen Brack? Sorry, buddy, bringing you up again because I need to make a point. I know it might suck for you. But Brack essentially addressed the WoW Classic idea as something that's never going to happen and something we won't even want to have happen. Well, that didn't really age well. We got Classic, we also got TBC, Wrath, and soon Cata Classic. And the development for the never going to happen and you don't want it idea went even lateral with hardcore WoW and Seasons of Discovery. There is nothing you can realistically say about WoW that cannot happen. Card game, full-fledged mobile game, MOBA, and who knows, maybe console port for WoW is on the horizon after the Microsoft acquisition. But that's talking about what the game will get. What about the Netflix series? John Haidt mentioned that we have a full green light process, aka budget, for Warcraft. One of the reasons why Chris is back is to make sure we stay consistent with the Warcraft universe across all projects. He's basically there to say, this is in, this is out. This means project as in games, but more than that because he also went out to say, we start with games, we are going to expand beyond that. In a world with Netflix's Witcher, Arcane, Castlevania, the only logical place beyond gaming with a gaming IP is a TV series. It's only logical. Will we finally get that Arthas season people wanted? Maybe, but that's the boring version of what the Warcraft Netflix series can be. The more interesting version is to tell it side by side with the upcoming stories. Stories that are planned years ahead, expansions ahead, the World Soul Saga? Depending on how they play this, they can literally tell the actual canon WoW story in a TV series while we get to act it out in-game. This is ambitious, but if they go with it, this essentially assures their longevity on the small screen for multiple seasons. They can do the Game of Thrones version, not Season 8, and have the show bring a different life to the story. And hey, they can still do the Game of Thrones version, not Season 8, and have spin-offs or prequels where they can still tell the Arthas story everyone seems to think will be the best choice. The story department has been struggling for years with telling the full story in-game, and opted for short stories and then books and more books. Don't get me wrong, I love books, but it's one thing to have Arthas, the story of the prince with more details, dialogue, and intrigue on how he becomes the Lich King, a story I already played in Warcraft 3 and Wrath of the Lich King, and another to make Sylvanas books that answer the "wait, what's actually going around here?" questions. There is a plethora of space when it comes to WoW's short and big stories. It's big, small, or developing characters, and there is no golden rule to expect the Netflix series to focus exclusively on what happened in the past games. For all we know, they could just go all out with new characters or timelines, although at this point they have to know that the so-called Warcraft universe today is strictly sustained by their most dedicated fans and players, and if they want to repeat the same mistakes as they did with the Warcraft movie, trying to please both fans and wider audiences, then it will go to the toilet. So yeah, past stories structured into seasons with 10 to 15 episodes would help detail a lot of the spaces left in prior narratives. John Haidt also said what is possibly the most ambitious thing ever. So ambitious that I'm not really sure he was allowed to make such a statement.
How do we signal to the world that, Warcraft is a universe, 240 million strong, and we're going to grow from there. And we are going to branch into other things.
For all the MCU memes people have been throwing around the 3 expansions being announced at BlizzCon, this is literally the most MCU thing I have heard regarding Warcraft. Saying that they want people to see Warcraft as a universe is big. It's Warcraft, not World of Warcraft. And with Chris Metzen's addition to the team, which was the missing link, now everything is complete. You might think that the Metzen shtick is overplayed at this point, but really think about it some more. The whole saga idea is from Metzen and his team, a big overarching narrative to be played and experienced over the next 3 expansions for WoW feels very MCU indeed, but very Lord of the Rings trilogy also. And it's safe to say that a big majority of us got super hyped to see what the hell is coming. Metzen is in charge of the Warcraft universe, not just WoW. Metzen helped create, if not spearheaded, the entire world of the Warcraft universe, and when you expand into multiple games and cinema, you need to be able to keep the story cohesive, or you end up with Disney Star Wars that not only retconned the Old Republic, but is kind of rewriting it and renaming it today. Having a consistently driven mind when it comes to a fantasy world that tells its story and holds the reins on what is permissible and what is not is how Game of Thrones was successful for the first season, because they had the consistent stories from George R.R. Martin's books. Now for us, that will be Metzen. Although he didn't write Warcraft's story alone, he had the largest impact on it, and if one person should be in charge of it, then that's him. So with the missing link to what was needed for a show currently on board, with obvious successful precedents already on the market, and the Netflix platform confirmed, and the Microsoft acquisition that can offer a much wider array of options and opportunities, there's nothing stopping Blizzard from making a Netflix series, whether it will be about Arthas, Thrall, Jaina's new lover, or even Volpera. I would expect a teaser or even an announcement at next year's BlizzCon. Mark my words though.
No Volpera.
This is the right time to come back to WoW, and when you decide to do it, click our mains video right here to get a better understanding of what to play and how to choose the character you want in 10.2. All this while we wait for the Warcraft Netflix series.